You're listening to episode 136, Jamie's Story, a daughter with limb loss and Tetralogy of Fallot. Hello, my friends. I'm so glad that you're here today. And because you listen to this podcast, you share it, you support these parents and these families, and rate and review is the reason that we can continue to do this podcast. And I'm just so grateful. If this is your first time tuning in, I am Katie Taylor, a certified child life specialist, and this is a place where parents come in a safe space and share their stories and experiences about what it's like to be a parent with a child who has to have medical procedures, a diagnosis, differences, different abilities. This is a place where parents come and share so that other parents who are just starting in their journey can feel less alone and get just some great wisdom and advice from other parents who have already walked this path. Today's episode is no different. There were parts of Jamie's story today that just had me tearing up, and not because it was sad in any way, but just the impact that what we think of maybe relatively small things can have on a family. For example, she talks about how just someone bringing her like a hoodie to wear in the hospital, or the kindness from a neighbor mowing a lawn when parents and families are going through these challenges can make such a difference. Not only is Jamie so well-spoken, but she herself has dealt with a chronic illness her whole life. And so she brings a really interesting perspective in being able to pull from what she has dealt with, and what it may be like for her child in the future and as she endures different things. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's my conversation with Jamie. Okay, really quick before we jump into the conversation. If you are a child life specialist and you are certified and you like cool people and you like to get really affordable PDUs and you love to share information and resources because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, then you need to come join us in the Child Life Circle community. We are child life specialists who not only chat on forums and share information, but we get really cool webinars from community organizations and also access to PDUs. So it is $14.99 a month until the end of October. So come in and join us, be a founding member, get to know us. We hope to see you. You can visit childlifeoncall.com, click on Child Life Circle to learn more information, including a letter to give to your employer to see if they can pay for your memberships. So, okay, join us there and we hope to see you.
My name is Jamie. I am a mama of one. I am happily married. We've been married for, oh gosh, she's going to kill me. It will be 14 years this year. We live in sunny San Antonio, Texas. We just adopted a rescue dog named Jack. Our family loves, we like being outdoors, even though we do live in Texas and it's super hot. So we like being outdoors from like November to April. And then
That's why we live here, right?
yeah,
Like because of those months.
yes. And then after that, we are very much indoorsy people, because it
Yes.
just is so hot. But yeah, we love being outdoors. We love hiking. My husband and I are very into personal fitness. And so being active is a big part of our lives. We are huge book nerds. We love reading. Big movie buffs. We love watching movies. My husband and my daughter are big gamers, so they love playing computer games. Mama's really not into that, but I cheer them on and I get popcorn for them. They get hungry. But yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell.
I love that. That sounds like a lot of ingredients for a really good time and a fun family.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to be talking about Callie today. Do you want to just give us kind of explain what happened in those first few moments that you realized that something was going on with Callie?
Yeah. So Callie Grace was born 7 weeks early. So I had a very normal pregnancy. My doctor, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so my doctor, we with my type 1, obviously I had to have a couple more appointments, and we watched me a little bit more closely than somebody that maybe doesn't have a chronic disease. And so for those of you that don't know, type 1 diabetes, your pancreas doesn't make insulin. It can't produce insulin on its own. So I have to take insulin either via injections, or I wear an insulin pump, which helps me with that. So because of that, there's extra complications that can come with pregnancy. And so obviously through my pregnancy, we were monitoring all of that, and no cause for concern. All of my appointments were fantastic. Everything was going great. And then Callie came 7 weeks early via C-section, which was not planned either. She had some trouble with her heart rate during my labor, so they recommended we go in and get her for her safety and mine. And so when she was born, she was very quiet, which I know is not normal. In all the movies and all the TV shows, you hear the baby crying, and she was not crying. She was also very blue. And so we literally saw her for a split second, and then they whisked her off to run a bunch of tests and check on her. And they came back to us. I don't know how long it was. I mean, obviously I'd just gone through giving birth, and you're so medicated, and like everything's fuzzy. And I remember them coming back to talk to us, but we still hadn't seen her. Like literally we saw her for a split second, and then they took her away. And so they came back to us, and they told us that she had a heart condition. They weren't sure exactly what it was yet, but she had severe leakage from one of her valves that they could tell, and her heart was just struggling. And they recommended that they call in a cardiologist to talk to us. And so the cardiologist comes in and does an assessment with Callie. And then at that time, we could finally see her. They wheeled her in the little incubator, and we finally got to see her. But the cardiologist told us that she had a condition that was called Tetralogy of Fallot. So she needed, she had a hole in part of her heart, and then she needed a valve replacement. And so obviously, I mean, there's so many emotions going through your head at that point, because my entire life I'd been told that maybe having a baby wasn't the best option for me because of my diabetes. And so to kind of be told that your entire life, and then to finally get to the point where you think that you kind of met that goal and had that dream come true, only for somebody to tell you that you maybe might have to say goodbye to your child, and that they can't promise you that she'll pull through the surgery, and it's very risky. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. You just went through labor, so your body went through a bunch of trauma. So it was a pretty scary and confusing and heartbreaking time. There was a lot of grief. There was a lot of anger. It was not one of our best days. I guess we could we could say that for sure. Yeah.
It's like, as you're saying this, I'm thinking like literally your greatest fear of all time that has been told to you is it's happened. And that is so terrifying. And like you said, just so many mixed emotions. And the other thing I just keep thinking about is what you mentioned, the trauma your body just went through, from a C-section and a surprise labor 7 weeks early, and, and probably your health with diabetes. And I'm sure labor doesn't, make things easy on you. And it's just, it's so much to process. And the other thing that's standing out to me too is, this birthday, and you're kind of told that this is going to be the best day of your life, and you get to meet your baby. And then, like you said, the grief that shows up when that doesn't happen.
Yeah, most definitely. And in thinking back on it, obviously we've had many years to process this. But
yeah, how old is Callie now?
Oh, so she's 13. So she's 13 now. So
okay.
we are deep in the teenage years now, which is another
it's another podcast episode.
Yeah, which is another podcast episode, exactly. But I mean, we've had a lot of time, and obviously we've done a lot of work to kind of walk through and process all of those feelings. But you do kind of have this fairy tale image of how your birth is going to go, and what your family is going to look like, and honestly, what your life is going to look like when you're pregnant and when you have a baby. And we didn't have anything that I had hoped for. We didn't have anything that I had dreamed for. Um, and part of me honestly felt like I'd been cheated, like somebody had taken all of like my hopes and dreams and like handed them out to somebody else. And it took me a very long time to kind of work through it's simple stuff like you normally anticipate, like you have flowers get delivered to your room and balloons, and they put a beautiful little sign on your door, and everybody's telling you congratulations, and we didn't get congratulations. We got I'm so sorry. We got I'm so sorry. And that's what we kept hearing over and over again was I'm so sorry. And I really wish that part of what we do through our blog and social media is to kind of try and change that theme and that tone that comes with having children that do have either disabilities or chronic illness is it's not a time to say I'm sorry. It's a time to acknowledge the fact that yes, you had something that you did not plan for, a traumatic event, but also you did have a baby, and to really step into that joy and that gratitude and not lose sight of those things, because that's something that we didn't really get to have. That, like I said, in hindsight, I wish that we would have been able to.
So it's kind of like, instead of coming in and saying, I'm sorry that this is the news we have to give you, this is what the reality is. And your body just went through an amazing process, and you have a beautiful baby girl, and we're going to do everything we can. Like, that would be better than I'm so sorry. This is what it is. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Night and day conversation, especially
Totally.
from an emotional standpoint. Yeah, it would have been a totally different experience, I think, had that happened.
Yeah. Wow. That's, yeah, I guess it's funny when I asked you, how old is Callie now? I mean, you could have said she's 2. Like, that's how,
Right.
the detail that you remember when these
Yeah.
things come back to you. So I guess, you had to quickly go into my baby is going to surgery mode. Were you around family at that time? Were you and your husband able to get any kind of support through that? Or were you
Yeah.
scared to tell people? How did that go?
Yeah. So luckily, our families are both local. The hospital that I had Callie at, unfortunately, was not the level of a trauma center that would need to perform her surgery. So, like you said, my body had gone through an extremely traumatic process with a C-section, and so they had to medevac her to a different hospital in downtown San Antonio, and I had to stay behind for a day because they wouldn't check me out, and I had to sign a bunch of waivers saying I understood what kind of a responsibility I was taking and that the hospital wouldn't be responsible, but I signed myself out early so I could be there for her open heart surgery. And then luckily, like I said, my family and his family are all in San Antonio or in a neighboring outside city, and were able to come down and help us. And they really, all of them, stepped up and were there, not only for her surgery, but for the 3 months that we were in the NICU after that too. Our best friends were there for us. We do and had, we still do have an amazing little community that just supports us.
It's literally, for some reason. So just to kind of give you a heads up, when we're professional in the hospital, of course, I do my best to hide emotions, but for some reason, when I interview moms like you on this podcast, I just get so emotional. And what's making me feel that way is like this community of people that just show up with, little to no preparation, and they're just there, and like what a difference that can be for you and your family. And just community is so important, and I'm so glad that you had that during those first few days.
Yeah, and it's stuff like, because in the moment you don't know what you need. I mean, I had no idea what I
Yeah.
needed. If somebody would have asked me what I needed, I probably, and I'm sure I did, I probably would have just sat there with a blank look on my face, because you're just shell shocked and you're overwhelmed, and everything is coming at you. You're in the hospital itself is a hard environment. There's so much sound and stimulation, and I always laugh when, myself personally, or when they tell this to Callie, but I always laugh when they tell us, get some rest when you're in the hospital, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what? you can't get rest in the hospital. It's so loud and noisy, and there's alarms, and my baby's lying there hooked up to 8 million
Oh my
machines. Like, I'm
gosh.
not going to get any rest. And so
Yeah.
having people that would show up with food, or, I mean, the hospitals are always cold, with a hoodie for me, or comfortable slippers, because we could stay in the room with her, as long as we weren't, in the way of the nurses or anything. Stuff like that was just so impactful. And it wasn't just the people that showed up. It was also people that would let us know that they were thinking of us in other ways. And so our neighbors cut our grass, because we were literally living at the hospital. My mom would come and just do laundry for us. We had other people that would just shoot us messages saying, "Hey, I know you don't have to respond, but we're thinking of you." And it was just stuff like that helped. And I'm so grateful to everybody that showed up for us, and still continues to, when we need them.
We'll be right back. If you have ever wondered where you could get those cloth dolls that child life specialists use with kids for medical education, or sending home to siblings, or to draw on for therapeutic activities, then you don't have to wonder any longer, because our friends at Smile Makers have decided to now sell these amazing cloth dolls for a very affordable price. I know that when I was in the hospital, I would have to rely on a volunteer network to then give us the dolls, which was really nice, but I had to wait a lot of times. Like, I would need a doll now and I wasn't able to get it. So this is a great place to be able to go get your procedure dolls at smilemakers.com. And y'all, they have 3 different skin tones for these cloth procedure dolls. In addition, you can actually buy a procedure doll prep bundle that comes with fabric markers. This is a fabulous way to do your medical teaching, to help siblings feel involved, to get kids creative, to do a lot of teaching about different diagnoses. And so go to smilemakers.com so you can get your cloth dolls as soon as possible before they run out. And when you go to that checkout to get your cloth dolls, also type in OnCall20 and you will get 20% off your entire order. So not just the cloth dolls. So if you get a bundle for Child Life Specialists, if you get a piece of furniture, if you get one of their really cool toys and prizes, or you order a large sticker order from them, OnCall20 gets you 20% off your whole order. That's smilemakers.com, code OnCall20 to get 20% off. And so was her surgery successful? And I guess, just hearing from you saying that you had to live there for a long time, she was hospitalized for a good bit, I imagine.
Yeah, she had to, like I said, she went through the open heart surgery at 3 days old, and then they kept us in the NICU. We kind of floated in between the NICU and the PICU, so the pediatric intensive care unit, and then the NICU for about 3 months, because open heart surgery is no joke, especially when you're 3 days old. And so in addition to recovering from that, Callie had to learn how to be like a baby. She had to learn how to feed and to sleep, and she had a feeding tube for a very long time. She obviously was on oxygen because of her heart condition, and so we had to help her, and we had to go through that recovery process where she could be viable and do normal baby things before they were comfortable letting us go. And it simple stuff that like putting on weight. She had a horrible time putting on weight because we tried breastfeeding and it just didn't work. And so we'd have to do combinations between a bottle and the feeding tube. And so then there was the weaning off of the feeding tube process. And then once we kind of checked that box, then we had to wean her off the oxygen. And then I'll never forget it. We thought we were getting close to getting out. And so they told us, they're like, okay, well, if we feel like you guys are doing good over the next 3 days, we can discharge her. And it was so close to Christmas. And so my husband and I were like, we're going to get her home by Christmas. And so for those 3 days, we were like, I'm sure zombies, because both of us were like sitting there just like watching her, like willing her to like breathe and to put on weight.
Yes.
But she did it. And so we got to go home right before Christmas. So
wow.
all in all, it was almost 3 months in the NICU, which is a long time.
Yes. Well, there's a whole, second part of Callie's story in addition to her Tetralogy of Fallot, and that's her limb loss. And so can you walk us through how that happened? Is that something she was born with too, or did that come later?
Yeah, so that as if the heart condition wasn't enough.
It's not enough. Let's see what else we can add on.
Exactly. God's like, I think you got this under control. Let's add one more thing and see how you handle this one, right? So we, at the time when she was born, she had both legs, both feet. And honestly, we thought she was perfect. She had 10 fingers, 10 toes. And so it was several days before either one of us kind of realized that there was a limb difference with one of her legs. Her legs was markedly shorter than the other one. And then her foot at the ankle kind of bowed in, very similar to like club foot. And so after we got her stable with the heart surgery, they brought in some orthopedic specialists to talk to us. And that in itself, again, was another trauma-filled, grief-filled, anger-filled point in our lives where we're just, again, knocked over and knocked over by the choices that we had to make. So they kind of explained to us that with her heart surgery, they didn't want to do anything at that point. Obviously, she was still little. They wanted us to go see a bunch of specialists. Luckily, in Texas, there's one of the best orthopedic hospitals in the country for children. It's Dallas Scottish Rite Hospital for children. And so they recommended that we go up there and talk to them about the options that she would have, because they explained it to us, there were two of them. And we could either put her through a bunch of surgeries where they broke and stretched and broke and stretched and broke and stretched her leg bone, adding in a bunch of metal rods in an attempt to fashion a leg for her to walk on. The way they explained it sounded medically horrific for somebody like me that had been that had diabetes and had a chronic condition and had been in the hospital, because Callie essentially would have spent her entire childhood in a hospital. They also did not sound very optimistic that it would work. And they said that if it didn't work, ultimately they would still have to do an amputation below her knee. Or the second choice, which was also terrible, was that we could amputate below her knee, so take off pretty much mid-calf down, and then get her fitted for a prosthetic leg when she's about 18 months old. And so they, as they're talking through that option, the specialist, obviously, that was talking with us is letting us know, that Callie would be able to do almost anything that everybody else could do, just maybe with a little bit of difference. She could still go to school, she could still run, she could still play, she could still, whatever sport she wanted to do, she could do, she could swim. She would have a semblance of a normal childhood. And so you've got two terrible choices. And I I mean, we did not make either or make the choice lightly. It wasn't something where we were like, oh yes, option B sounds fantastic, let's do that one. It was something that we got multiple opinions on. We talked to many different doctors. We prayed on it. We talked with family. We talked with friends. We met with several families that had gone through both procedures. And for us, ultimately, we wanted to give her the best shot at a normal childhood. So we went with doing the amputation because she could get fitted for a prosthetic before she was 2. And so hopefully before any of those core memories could be formed, the only thing she would know would be life with a prosthetic. And we wouldn't have to put her through being in the hospital for her entire childhood. We wouldn't have to put her through multiple procedure after multiple painful procedures, only to maybe have to still do an amputation when she's older. And it's much more difficult when you're older to kind of work through that from not only from a mental standpoint, a mental health standpoint too, but also from a physical standpoint to have to be able to say goodbye to your leg when she was older. So my husband and I, we took on that responsibility of making that decision so she wouldn't have to when she was older. And that's kind of what happened. We waited until she was right at 19 months when we did the surgery, and then we had to wait for her leg to heal before we got her fitted for her first prosthetic.
One of the things that just keeps coming up for me as you're explaining this is other parents and moms in particular, the past few episodes that we've interviewed have said this very similar thing about you don't realize the magnitude of the decisions that you're going to have to make and that are in front, like these literal life and death, life-changing decisions. And when you become a parent, we sign up for it, but we don't necessarily know that we sign up for it. And then when you're a medical parent, those decisions can weigh so heavy. But I love what you're talking about, how you didn't make a decision lightly. You researched it, you really thought about it, and ultimately it sounds to me like you gave her a huge gift in what you guys have chosen for her.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think that obviously she's bigger now, and so we've had more conversations about it, and we've shown her the pictures from her surgery and talked through that kind of thing. But you're right. Unfortunately, you have to make those decisions so many times. And I don't ever want to become numb to those, but sometimes you do. Sometimes it's just decision after decision after decision.
Right.
And it can be overwhelming at times. And you don't think, again, when you're reading that book, what to expect when you're expecting, like you don't ever think that that's going to happen. And that those are the things that you're going to have to walk through, and that you and your partner are going to have to walk through. But I think we have always, from day one, made decisions based on what we thought was best for her and our family. Obviously, we take into consideration other people's perspectives and the doctor's recommendations. But if it doesn't feel right, and if it doesn't align kind of what we want her life to be like, then we don't normally do it. And so I think we made the right decision. Granted, there are days where I question it sometimes when she has a hard day, or when she has to have another surgery, or we have to do something else that's hard on her. But I think at the end of the day, I know that we made the right decision for her.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the other part of these decisions, right? It's not like, okay, we've made it, let's move on. They stay with you, and you're always kind of wrestling with, the impact of doing it or not doing it. The decision maybe in some ways is the easy part, and going through with it is the hard one.
Yeah, most definitely.
Will you talk to us a little bit about how you handled the stress of all of that, and maybe how that's changed or transformed since Callie has grown through the years?
Oh, yeah. So I 100% did not handle it well. I can full transparency. I did not handle it well. I really wish I could say that I did, but I did not. There were, oh gosh, I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and therapy is a wonderful thing for working through those types of emotions and events. And I wish that I'd have, or someone would have put me in therapy way sooner than I did. But there was, I mean, so much. I didn't know what it was at the time. It's most definitely grief, but I didn't know that that's what those feelings were. I always thought of grief in regards to like death, where the event happens, right? Somebody that you love passes away, or you lose someone that you love, and then it's done, right? There's nothing after that. It's done. And I didn't understand that grief is a lifelong experience, and that you can have grief not from things other than people dying. I don't know why I was so naive to think that wasn't the case, but there was, I mean, a lot of anger I had at the beginning too. Anger at myself. I blamed myself. I'm like, I didn't take care of myself when I was pregnant. No matter what the doctors told me, I obviously did something wrong. It impacted my husband and my relationship, because nobody else that we knew was experiencing anything like that. And so neither one of us had an outlet where we could let that sadness and that anger and that grief out on, but each other. And so there would be periods where, understandably, and I know, again, hindsight, I know that we knew we could go up against each other because we were the only ones that knew what we were going through. And so sometimes it was just like a raging hurricane of emotions with each other, because we knew that if we turned that on anybody else, like, they wouldn't have survived our wake. And so I know time is a magic healer. I know therapy is a magic healer. I know that for me, writing and sharing our story and finding people like us, a community like us, parents like us, kids like Callie, sharing our experiences with people that are in the same shoes that we were 12 years ago is extremely healing. Reading books about people's experiences like ours is very healing as well. Doing podcasts like these, I mean, to be honest, this is healing. This helps me a lot. I think those are some of the things that definitely have helped. Exercise is another huge one. And I mean, I know it's going to sound silly, but exercise and like eating right, because for a very long time after Callie's multiple surgeries, I didn't take care of myself. I was too focused on taking care of her, and it took me a little bit to figure out that I can't take care of her and be performing at my best if I'm not taking care of myself. And so that's from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, eating, sleeping, all of those things. Silly stuff too, like date nights. We didn't take a vacation for I don't know how many years. we we did not do date nights for I don't know how many years, because we were afraid to leave her with anybody. And so I know that probably impacted our marriage. And also, if you're not doing things that you love, you can't be the best mom for your kiddos. And so I know that's probably a lot of things, but I think those are some of the things that kind of I experienced and things that have helped me since then.
Yeah, I think, and it's not all of those all of the time. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, when it shows up, you listen to it and you're like, okay, this feels really good. This is something I can maintain. And then you
Yeah.
can continue to add on. And then before you know it, you're taking care of yourself and you have that noticeable difference that you can care for your child better.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a couple more questions. I wish I could talk to you for the next hour, but
Uh-huh.
I don't want to take up so much of your
Yeah.
time. But could you tell us a little bit about what Callie has taught you about yourself that maybe you didn't know before she was born?
Oh my gosh. So everything. I know as a parent, you're kind of taught, right, by society that you're the one that's going to be the one teaching your child, and you're the one that's going to be the one sharing wisdom and guiding them and helping shape who they are. And in reality, I mean, I probably could speak for both my husband and I, but she's the one that teaches us. I mean, she's the one that she finds strengths in me that I didn't know I had, for sure. I struggled a lot when I was younger with my diabetes. I wanted to hide it. I didn't want to be different from anybody else. I didn't want to have to be different or look different. And so I would hide aspects of that from people that I didn't know. And I mean, honestly, from people I worked with, my friends, I would try and hide bits and pieces. And Callie has really taught me that why do you want to hide bits and pieces of yourself? And especially we tell her, and she tells us too, when you were obviously born to stand out. Like, you were born this way, and you were born with the gifts and unique abilities and perfectly imperfect parts of yourself for a reason. And why would you try to hide those away? And I think that she has really taught that to me and reinforced that in me. Gosh, I mean, so much. Kindness,
Yeah.
inclusion. I feel like I'm much more of an empathetic person. I've always been an empathetic person. I'm definitely a people person. I love talking to people. I love interacting with people. But she has really opened my eyes to making sure that everybody has a seat at the table, and making sure that everybody's voice is heard, and that everybody feels valued and seen, no matter what their abilities are, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from. She has really helped teach me that, for sure. I mean, gosh, I could talk to you for an hour on just strength, what she's taught me from a strength perspective.
She sounds like an incredible teacher, like
Very,
just by being exactly who she is, which is amazing.
very much so.
Well, if I don't know if you guys are on Instagram, or if you would be okay with some people following along with you and learning from you, and just learning about some of the ways that you advocate for yourselves and for others. That would be amazing.
Yeah, we are. So we have, we actually have a profile just for Callie. Obviously, Mama runs that one. Callie's not on social media, but that's where we share a lot of our experiences as a family with a kiddo with a disability, and it's at The Princess and the Prosthetic. And that's the name of our blog too. It's linked in hers. And then mine personally, where I share more about kind of my journey with type 1 and being a writer and a mama to a little girl with a disability. That one's at Blondie and Bear. We call her Bear, so that's where that name came from.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to Callie for letting us have a little bit of your story as mom too, because it's important to know that the kids are the ones who are going through this, but parents have a lot of their own experiences too, which can transform and shape who we are. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.